one of the questions I ask almost all of our clients when we're working through branding is, give me your top 10 clients. Who are the top 10, not revenue, yes, revenue, that can be a part of that, but top 10 where you're like, I want repeated clients like that. And that could be a relationship. They have the best relationships. They've been with us a long time. They never balk at anything we recommend to them. They listen, they pay, there's good revenue there. They even advocate for us, and there's like referrals. Okay, what is unique about those clients? That might actually lead us back to something, one of your particular strengths that is really important to you as a firm that we can leverage in your brand, in your identity, right? It is you.
What's going on, brand storyteller? All right, welcome back to the Storytelligent podcast. I'm your host, Bryce McNabb, and we are wrapping up our conversation with Mike Jones today in part 2, where we're going to start to dig into these fundamental characteristics of your brand DNA. What makes up your brand DNA? And then how do you go about figuring out what your brand identity even is? What makes you unique? How do you even understand these elements of your brand DNA? We're going to dig into that in our conversation. If you missed last episode, episode 39, we began our conversation with Mike Jones. Mike is my friend out of Tempe, Arizona. He runs a brand agency called Resound, and he specializes in creating brands for accounting firms and professional services firms. So, if anybody understands brand, it's Mike. The guy is a complete expert on brand, and so I wanted to bring him on so that way we could begin this series where we're no longer looking outward to figure out our story and how to communicate our story, but we're now looking inward to balance that other half of brand storytelling, which is to define the brand. Without further ado, here's Mike Jones. So as you're cutting away, what are you looking for? What are you trying to get to?
I'm looking for what about your firm makes certain people, like a certain group or certain groups of people, the best fit for you. Because that often tells me that there's something unique about your identity as a firm, that you're really good at serving this type of person with this type of service, with these other specific attributes. That is your identity, right? At some level, that's your identity. Now, why is that doable, right? Maybe there's some fundamental belief behind your brand. Maybe there's some fundamental cultural identifier with your brand. Maybe it's like, we work with a firm out of Houston. They're very focused on Houston. They live, breathe, love Houston. I'm like, great. Then you need to lean into that as hard as you possibly can. That probably means you need to hire people only in Houston.
Can I speak this back to you real quick?
Yeah.
So it's almost as if you're looking at this like this organization is operating with specific unique abilities. Mm-hmm. But they are being held back because of their inability to fully communicate those unique abilities that they have. But by communicating those unique abilities, that will add a level of magnetism that they're not experiencing yet.
Yes.
That will really surprise them, but it's going to draw these delighted customers and more ideal customers. So they're going to be able to attract people that they work best with.
Yep.
And then people that they work best with are going to more immediately find them because they're not trying to sound like everybody else.
Yeah. I mean, think about your own personal life, right? How many people do you know who kind of have these vague identities? They're not specific about what they do. They're not specific about how they talk. They're not specific about where they're from. Just grab identifiers, right? Different things that are unique to them, their history, their background, their experience, their skills, right? They're just maybe early in your career. I think like a lot of people, you can think of a lot of friends or even yourself that maybe early in your career, you didn't really know, but also you were afraid. You were afraid to kind of be specific. And so for firms, it's the same thing, right? Are we attracted to people that are not specific? No. We're incredibly attracted to people who are very specific, that really understand themselves and are willing to so specifically communicate who they are and what they can best do and how they can best deliver value to others that we're like, oh, I want to be a part of that. Or that's so not me. That's like not for me at all. But now it's really clear and I don't have to like think about it. I don't have to worry about it. I might even know somebody who maybe that's a really good fit for. I might make that recommendation, right? So I think if you relate it to individuals, it kind of becomes easier to understand as an organization, right? If I have an organization, if I have a business and I'm just not clear on exactly what we do for these types of people, because we have this unique culture, we have these unique attributes as a firm, right? And therefore we can deliver this kind of real value to you. That's story. Like that, those are the fundamentals of story, right?
As we've been talking, it's almost like these two words popped into my head: magnetism and polarizing.
Mm-hmm.
But suddenly I realized it's like,
that's
the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, because magnetism doesn't work the other way, right? North to north doesn't work. It actually is literally polarizing.
It has to become polarized. You have to polarize in order to attract.
Correct. Yeah.
And so, but that's the fear. The fear is, but I'm pushing people away.
You ever tried to attract anything with a non-magnetized metal? How does that go? It doesn't stick to anything. That's interesting because a non-magnetized metal, like maybe iron, right? Like a piece of iron, it will not stick to just anything on its own. It won't stick to another piece of iron, right? So it's not going to attract anything. But guess what it does do? It gets attracted to other magnets. And that I think is kind of goes back to a point I was trying to make, was like, if you're not going to be specific, you're not going to attract others, but you're also going to get subsumed into the actual magnets in your industry, right? And that could happen a number of different ways. One is, well, you just copy them because it's just easier, and you just kind of, I'm always following, and so you just always end up following the leaders within your industry and never actually leading yourself, never actually making decisions for yourself, which means you actually end up just telling your clients subconsciously, or maybe it's subversively, we're not the one actually leading here. They are. And you're only picking us probably because we're cheaper than the best.
I was just going to say, if you're doing that, you're just the non-brand cereal.
So and guess how the non-brand cereal makes
expectation. Sales? Yeah, you're projecting this expectation of, hey, we're as good as they are, but cheaper.
But cheaper.
And that might not even be on your advertising, but that is now the expectation people are going to have coming into this engagement.
Yeah. Because, I mean, how else would I choose you over, like if I walk into the cereal aisle and I see all the cereals up there and I know all the name brands and they got the really interesting characters and stuff. And then there's the generic like store brand one. And I'm like, why would I pick that one? Like, what about that would get me really excited? I don't trust it. It doesn't have a well-known brand. Probably doesn't have really cool packaging. It doesn't tell me that there's quality. All it says is we're at least as good as the worst of the rest of them, right? And then the last thing you see is the yellow or red sticker that tells you, oh, it's cheaper, right?
So after you figure out your value proposition, you get really clear about that. You're saying what we need to do is figure out who we are best at serving. So figure out our ideal customers, because that's going to inform something about ourselves. I think a lot of what we've been saying, we've been indirectly saying that self-awareness is hard.
Yep.
Right?
No, use your existing clients to tell you who you are. I mean, that's a major step in our process with clients. Is we start with them and we say, all right, you tell us who you are. And we have some exercises to help you do that honestly. Right. And in a group setting, so that you have an opportunity to kind of discuss it and see the different opinions in the room with the leadership team. Okay, that's great. You're a 400-person firm. I guarantee your leadership does not know the answers to those questions with 100% certainty. And so the next step is, let's go feedback these assumptions to your clients. I want to hear what they have to say. What are the words they use? do they agree with these words? Do they agree with these concepts? Or, a lot of times what we hear, I would say 9 times out of 10, what we hear from the clients of our clients is the concept is right of what they believe and how they do things, the way, their culture, right? What makes them different, how they service people. But these are the words that we would use. We wouldn't use their words that they came up with. We would use these words.
Yeah.
And so then we're starting to kind of find the apex point where the conceptual idea of who you are internally is starting to meet how the clients think about you and in language that they understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then we add a third layer in there, which is the rest of your staff, right? Because a lot of times the boots on the ground, the people who are interacting with your clients all day long, they're not necessarily at the leadership level, right? And so they're the ones who can also give you feedback that's really helpful of like, yeah, we say that's a value we say we have, but here's what I actually see every day, right?
This is why I love talking to the sales teams and the biz dev people.
Yeah.
Because they're always like, yeah, marketing's giving us these messages, but I just say this to the customer because this is what they understand. In your mind, what are these core components of a brand DNA? And I think we just touched on core values. So let's
core values
what are these things?
Is one. So core values, which is like the fundamental beliefs, I call them the guide rails of your brand and really of your organization. They're the do's and don'ts, right? They're the non-negotiables. These are the rules by which we're going to do business. And they're hard. They have edges to them. So there's things we will do, and there are things we absolutely will not do because of these core values that we have or fundamental beliefs that we have, right?
The lines in the sand.
They're the lines in the sand, and they're non-negotiable. I tell all my clients, like, if you're coming up with really fun words that, you're like, oh man, like excellence, it's one of our core values. And there's all sorts of questions I have if you say that. One just being like, tell me more and define that for me. What does that look like, right? That's a very vague word. They all are, right? Core value words are really just not great in and of themselves. Integrity. Okay, what does that mean? I'm going to throw out some examples to you. I'm going to throw out some scenarios. Would you say that in that scenario, excellence is the most important thing? Or would you negotiate on excellence in order to live up to maybe another value? Right?
Oh, I love that.
And so then I go, well, then excellence isn't one of your core values. If you want to put it at another tier, or maybe it's an initiative that's important today, but maybe isn't going to span the lifespan of your company, right? Maybe it's a goal, maybe it's a success metric. I don't know why excellence would be that, but maybe it's, I tell them that a lot with like profit, right? Everyone's like, oh, profit's really important. It should probably be one of our core values. And I'm like, okay, have you ever negotiated on profit? Oh yeah, I mean, we gave that client a discount, or we had a big initiative for like 2 years, and we were willing to like, really hit the bottom line a little bit and take a hit in order to get to where we wanted to go. I go, so it's not a value, it's a goal, it's a metric of success, it's maybe an initiative level thing, right?
Or a cultural response. It's like we're answering the question of why is self-awareness so difficult, is because there's a lot of like trained answers that we have. So core values, what are these other fundamental components of brand DNA?
3 total in DNA, right? And that is core values, personality, right? So how do you act when you believe these things? What are the attributes of your personality, of your firm, of the culture that you have? And they're a direct extension of values, right? When you behave according to these rules, you're going to have consistent personality traits that come out. I kind of tell our clients, like, it's like if you were a person, if your entire firm is summed up in a person, that's actually a great exercise to create kind of a persona for your firm. Maybe use an archetype. We've done that with a lot of firms, or create a metaphor. Maybe go grab some real people in history or in literature or fictional people, kind of marry them up and go, hey, these people exemplify the same attributes that we have as a firm. Now we have something we can look at and say, that's who we are, right? Whenever I write, whenever I design, whenever I create for the brand at any level, right? Not just in marketing, but across the organization, I need to look, feel, sound like that, right? Because that's who we are. And then the third piece we've already talked a lot about is story, right? And that's probably the most external facing of those three. Now, story and personality is when you get into like, well, how do you communicate those things? That's when you get into logo design, you get into colors, you get into actual messaging, tagline development, the name of the firm itself. You get into like, do you have a voice, right? Maybe putting some voice guidelines together. And then obviously actually executing on those in all sorts of different media, whether that's your website, video, collateral that you're producing, trade show or event experiences that you put together, even your office, right? Like, what does your office communicate about your personality and about your story?
And to jump on what you just explained, it's like the reason why the experiences that we're designing, how we're presenting things, how we're communicating, colors, like shapes, styles, why that's so important to all be in sync is there's something called dual coded theory, which basically explains how meaning itself is multi-layered.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that I look at it is, I come from the visual storytelling aspect. I come from the cinematic aspect. So I always kind of project lessons that I've learned from that onto everything. It's like there's a specific reason. The more you can get everything in sync in the film, the more powerful that message is.
Yep.
So the tone, the wardrobe, the colors, the shot angle, the rhythm, the music,
Yep.
all of it is
up
there to reinforce that message so it sticks.
And it amplifies it, right? It's not just like I add one and I add another and now I have two. It's like I add one, I add another, and now I have five, right?
Yeah.
My amplitude is exponential. The more I can layer these elements in, and as long as they all resonate, right? They're all singing the same song from the same hymn book. That's one of my other metaphors with our clients is like, your brand is kind of like all these assets, the guidelines around them. That's kind of like your hymn book. We give it to everybody so everyone can be singing the same song in the same way, in the same kind of, and you can have harmonies in there, right? Like you can build harmonies and it can all be like really deep and interesting. It's not like everyone's all singing the exact same notes all at the same time, single melody line. I'm a musician, so I love kind of living in that world. But so it's like, hey, you have harmony. Everyone's kind of touching at this, coming at it from a little different angle, but you're all singing the same song.
But it's an apt metaphor because if there's not that harmony, then you're creating dissonance.
Correct.
And so you used a word earlier, friction.
Same idea.
Same thing. It's because this thing is now incongruent to the message we're communicating, but it's also fighting the message we're communicating because it makes no sense why this should be purple.
Yeah.
And purple is completely not the message that we're actually trying to say here.
But yeah, I mean, like that dissonance is what is going to kill you. So like having everybody on the same hymn book, all singing the same song, doing that in different levels, right? Visually, verbally. I love talking to people who live and breathe video like you do and cinema and videography. My business partner, Sam, is a videographer by background. And so I love like bringing him into the conversation. I don't think that way. I just don't live and breathe that stuff. I can appreciate great film. But I'm much more of like nuts and bolts, like design, words. I mean, I was early in my career, I was doing a bunch of direct mail stuff, right? Like that's the kind of level I'm used to, like kind of at a heart level. That's where I live. And so to say like, hey, you can layer in like things move, right? Now we're telling a story with movement. We're telling a story with music. We're telling a story audibly, not just words on a page or on a screen. And then you can layer in all sorts of, I love your idea of, or your comment about like the cinematography itself, right? Like shot selection. Is it wide? Is it narrow? At what point is it? I mean, then you get into like the real nitty gritty nuances of amazing storytelling. And that's why like cinematography is one of the best media for storytelling. Is because like you can have every detail. You can actually think through. And if I think about films that I like absolutely love, most of them are that level. It's like like Lawrence of Arabia, right? Like that's one of my all-time favorite films, and it's notorious for like the every single shot was like perfectly selected. I think the new Dune film is kind of in that realm. And then obviously you layer in all the other elements, music and stuff. And that's an element we don't get into a lot with our clients, but we keep talking about of like, we really want to, how far can we take branding? And one of them is like, and there are whole firms that do this. They do audio branding, right? It's like, how do you develop an audio brand through either music or little audio moments and motifs? You know,
So I create that with mine too.
Yeah.
Like I'm very intentional about thinking about that. Like I've got like a specific audio style that I have in my head the whole time. It's like, because I'm always trying to like find things that sound like Radiohead. And on one aspect, it's I know it's impossible. On one aspect, it's because I like Radiohead.
Yeah.
All right, so there's a selfish reason, but it's communicating something because it's like I'm trying to communicate this synthesis of how they can beautifully marry like almost like trip hop at times, but with like a symphonic sound. So you've got this like really like earthy, organic piece to a digital piece. And I'm always trying to marry that because at the heart, that communicates my personal philosophy that marketing is relationship.
Yep.
And sometimes it gets frustrating because I feel like certain organizations poo-poo brand because they see it as a last step of, well, we're not there yet, so we shouldn't deal with brand right now. But I feel like you've even convinced me throughout our conversation that if you're not already tapping into what your unique is, then you're forgettable.
Yep. Absolutely forgettable. You're just an also and, right? And then we've already touched on it. What do you have left to compete with? Like, how do you compete in the marketplace when you are forgettable? Price. Like that's really it. That's all you're left with is, I guess we'll stand out by just being lowest cost. And if that's the route you want to go, I'm not going to like fault you for it. Probably we're not a good fit to work with. Like and there's an element too. I caution anyone who's starting a business from scratch, they're just getting going. Like I would still say like, read my book or think about branding deeply, as deep as you can, but also give yourself some grace. Like you don't have any history yet. So how can you really know the level of depth that a firm that's been around for 60, 100 years has a level of history and continuity and experience that you don't have to build on with their brand? Now there's a plus to that. You
can try new things.
You can try some things.
Yeah.
You can kind of play around a little bit. And I also, caution, I was just talking with somebody recently. She's starting a little content marketing agency just on her own. It's just her right now. And she was like, hey, can I hire you guys? And I was like, you could. I don't think you should pay what we're going to charge because you're just not there yet. Like, tell me a little bit more about your vision. She's like, oh, well, I kind of only have like the next year kind of thought through of what I want it to be. I'm like, okay, so do you want it to be big or do you want it to be small in 10 years? She's like, I don't really know yet. I said, that's fine. That's totally fine. Start answering some of those questions as best you can. Maybe go hire a really good designer to give you a good kind of baseline visual brand. It might not be as deep, and be ready. You'll probably want to rebrand at some point, right? When you have a lot more of those questions figured out.
Yeah, I'm glad you're even starting here because from my observation, I've noticed that there's almost like 5 different stages of brand growth. And stage 1, I call awareness. And that's when I try to I try to tell people it's like when you're just starting out, when you're at a level 1 brand, you are what you do.
Yeah.
You don't listen to Simon Sinek. You don't start with why. You start with who and what.
Yeah.
Who are we serving and what are we doing for them and how are we serving them? How are we raising their quality of life? And that's where you start. And then when you get to level 2, you get into lifestyle because now you've got the awareness and now you get to you've got the history, right? You've maybe got a couple years under your belt. Now you can go back and be like, okay, let's start drawing out the actual uniques. Let's figure out this deeper DNA that maybe has been a guess initially. Maybe it's been just like an unconscious decision, but now let's go figure this out.
Yeah. I think I love that. I love the idea of these kind of levels. I think, and we say this in the book pretty clearly. I'd argue, yes, there are levels. You can move through them fast or slow.
Exactly.
I would argue, and this is what I tell every single person I know who's like in startup mode, is the sooner you can answer some of these deeper questions, even now, the sooner you will have something that is, I like your word, magnetic, right? That has resonance, that really will resonate with people, has a unique frequency. And you can probably blow through some of these other levels a lot faster because
100%.
You've done the homework. Now, that takes a certain kind of environment. The context has to be there to be able to do that. Someone who maybe has not done what they're doing for very long at all, who doesn't maybe have a lot of clients already that they've worked with, maybe for other firms,
right?
Maybe who
battle tested their skills,
doesn't have any business partners with them who bring certain specific uniques to the table, and they're not thinking strategically about how to bring those to, like, these uniques are our identity, and we're really well suited for a certain industry or a certain type of client with certain types of problems, right? Now, there's a level of just sophistication required for that. And if you don't have that within your business, then don't worry about it yet. Like think about it, but maybe like know that will come in time. But you can get pretty sophisticated with your brand on day one. There are amazing brands who have launched with great success because they've thought through some of these things a little bit sooner than others. But also, like, be okay with spending 15 years being just the shoe company for professional athletes or professional runners, right? Like Phil Knight was satisfied for basically 15 years that was what his company was. They scaled through that, but he wasn't satisfied to be there forever. And he always had that vision in mind. That I think is my lesson that I would want to impart to anybody, is like, it's okay to have big vision, even early, and start to build towards it. And it takes time. You're going to have to build some credibility. You're going to have to go through those levels that you were talking about, but start thinking about the vision.
Mike, how can people get in touch with you?
Resoundcreative.com, RESOUND creative.com is our firm's website. You can reach me there. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search for Mike Jones or Remarka Mike. That's actually my handle on LinkedIn. So if you do linkedin.com/in/Remarka Mike, you will find me. Remarkamike.com is also my personal website. If you will find me there, Twitter, anywhere else. If you Google Remarka Mike, you'll find me.
That's amazing. All right, plug your book.
All right. Yeah, You Are Remarkable. And it's all about how you can use your authentic identity to attract long-lasting customers for your firm, for your business. You can find it on Amazon.com. Just search for You Are Remarkable. It's a great book. There's paperback, there's ebook, there's hardcover if you really want to be very graciously kind and generous to me. But yeah,
I mean, no lie. Absolutely great book. You can see, like, I've got the whole thing like outlined and
got all marked up.
I've got the special pages already tagged to revisit. Oh yeah, I love the thing. It was awesome. Mike, thank you, dude. Seriously, so much. This was so much fun. We just went way over time.
We blew through it.
Blew through everything. I knew I maybe asked 5 questions. I just knew, like, when I emailed you, I was like, dude, we're just gonna roll. Maybe even 5 was too many questions. I needed 3. That's all I needed. Yeah,
it's all good. It was a blast.
We have to come back again. Yeah, this is awesome.
I'm working on another book, and that gets a little bit more into the audience side of, like, okay, how do we take this brand and we bring it to market in a way that is attractive to our clients?
Dude, if you need a pre-reader,
definitely
will volunteer myself.
I'm all over that. I will take you up on that. We're still working on it. It's going to be a little while. But if people want to check out my podcast, we're actually kind of slowly dripping. We're writing the book through a podcast. That's actually our process.
That was my daggum strategy too. I've got the Storytelligent book. Like, it's in shape. I'm like, I was very open about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was the whole point of this podcast, was for me to work my ideas out in public.
I love it. I love that process. I highly recommend it. It worked really well. We actually did a similar process for our first book, and we're doing it for our second. So,
Oh, dude.
Yeah.
See, this is why, man,
this is why
constant
we get
best friend
along.
moments. Yeah, I know. Good Lord. All right, man. Seriously, Mike, awesome. Thank you, man.
Thank you,
Thank
Bryce.
you so very much.
Appreciate you. Take care, man.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. Some key takeaways is don't be afraid to ask your current clients to give you clarity around your brand identity. Or if you are serving clients, look into their clients to uncover information and insight about who they are and what makes them unique. And just remember, those 3 core characteristics of your brand identity are your core values, your personality, and your story. And the whole purpose of all of this visual identity, your logo, your colors, your design style, is to help to fully communicate the essence of your brand. They should all work in harmony with each other, as well as your other creative assets, such as even audio styles or like sound effects, and the music that you select should all work together to fully communicate that essence of your brand. If you enjoyed what you heard in this podcast, got some links in the show notes to how you can track Mike down. Don't forget to get yourself a copy of his book, You Are Remarkable. This itself is a remarkable book. I love this book. Seriously, it is a well-used reference for me. I have the thing bookmarked and underlined on several pages. It is an incredible crash course into brand identity and uncovering yours or even your client's brand identity. So definitely pick up a copy of that book. If you want to take your brand storytelling skills to the next level, I highly encourage that you take my course, Brand Storytelling Fundamentals, Crafting an Authentic Customer Testimonial. I am going to teach you in that course my approach to crafting authentic customer stories, because the authentic customer story really trains you in the fundamental knowledge of brand storytelling, which is hitting that critical balance between achieving business goals as well as crafting meaningful, human-centered stories. So you can find that course at brycemcnabb.com/course. If you have any questions, you can always reach out to me at brycemcnabb.com. And if you want to bring your brand story to life, you can reach me at mcnabbstorytelling.com, which is my agency side, where I specialize in brand story strategy, content strategy, as well as video content campaigns. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.